I grew up in Decatur, Illinois, and everyone in my family plays tennis. I have one deceased brother and two brothers that are still alive, and tennis was actually all of our careers. We grew up a block from a public park facility and learned to play there, and all went on through my older brother, who became sort of the leader of the band. And my dad was a baseball player, and we just, because we were close to this public park facility, we all got involved in tennis. I think you have to go back in time for women. There weren't any other sports to play besides tennis, swimming, golf, and maybe there was a little softball when I'm going to be 72 years old, and I was pre-Title IX. In the state of Illinois, the first high school championship was the fall of 73. I'm sorry, fall of 72, and I graduated from high school in the fall of 72. And the first scholarships from Title IX were really about 75, 76, and I graduated from college in 76. So tennis was tennis was an avenue. My brothers all went to school on scholarships for tennis. There weren't any when I went to school, but I enjoyed the competitive nature of it, and like I said, there being close to the park, that was really all there was for us to do. We just went there and played tennis. Our friends played. I came to Kalamazoo. I started teaching tennis after college in Northern California, and I was living in Carmel, and it was a beautiful, beautiful area, and I loved Carmel. Uh, it was very expensive for someone not making much money, and my family was all back in the Midwest, and so a guy that I worked with became a pro at a club in Kalamazoo, and he asked me to come there, and so I came there and started teaching tennis. I mean, I was teaching in California for about 4 years, and then I went to Kalamazoo and I was teaching for a couple of years. And one of the guys I was working with teaching, his daughter, I was coaching her, not really coaching her, but she was in our clinics and things. And he was a dean of students at the Western Michigan, and he's like, "Hey, I think there's a job opening there, a coaching job. Maybe you'd like to look at it." And I said, it really, I liked it, the idea of it more, because generally speaking, people that take lessons from you never practice, they just take lessons. And so it sounded really fun to work with young people too, because I love college age kids. They were, I don't know, maybe that was a time where I felt like I wasn't as, I don't know, I didn't have many mentors at that stage in my life. And so I thought this is a good opportunity for me to start working with kids at an age that I think they need some help. No, I honestly, there really weren't any jobs. I was unusual. Western Michigan was one of the leaders actually in hiring people for full-time jobs coaching women. Most people at that time when I first started they were they were teaching PE classes. They were professors in PE, and maybe the coaching jobs were a third of their whole overall picture. When I first started, and that was pretty interesting because we were kind of on the same level as, Michigan, Michigan State, all the bigger, D1 schools. We hired full-time coaches for all of our women's sports. So that was, and all of a sudden you're a full-time coach. You've got benefits. I'm not grinding it out on the court teaching. And it was really fun too to be around other coaches. I loved sports, so it was fun that it wasn't just tennis 24/7. Well, I remember the very first day on the job because I went to my office and I was coaching. I had shared an office that was probably 10 by 12 with the men's tennis coach, and we actually shared a phone. And you had to write down on your sheet who made a long distance call, because when the bill came in, we had to separate the bill, and it went against my budget or against his budget. And the very first day on the job, a woman that played on the women's team and a guy that played on the men's team played a mixed doubles tournament, and they took, and I couldn't make this up if I tried, they took $25 in prize money. And someone from another school saw it, and we were like, right away, they're like, oh, you can't do that. And we were like, the athletic director's calling us in and saying, your kids took $25 in prize money. That was my first day on the job. And I'm like, what? So that was one of the things I remember right off the bat. That, and there was never, ever any money. When we first started, we had very big restrictions on the amount of competition you could have in the fall, for sure. And I think we played 2 tournaments. That was our fall. That was what we did. And then we didn't start in the spring. We didn't start in the spring until spring break. That was the beginning of the competition. I feel that I was able to instill some values in the players that came through the program. Obviously, everyone, they're not all your best friends, and they're not all had great experiences, but I'd say for the most part, I've gotten a lot of reward, especially in probably the last 10 years now, of people. Now they're adults, now they have kids in college, now they have, and they look back on their experience and realize that they got a good moral foundation on not just how to play a game, but how to live their life, I think. Well, that was kind of a before LinkedIn kind of thing, right? And that was a way of connecting with the people in your profession. I never had, I never, I stayed at the same school for 33 years. I maybe looked once or twice at other jobs, but I loved Kalamazoo, and the boards were a great way to stay involved in tennis, and I felt like also the mid majors needed representation, because our our representation was not as strong as maybe I thought it should be. Um, and so, I thought that was great. And then I also, there was a little bit of selfishness there, getting to know people. No, I don't know. As an example, maybe, I got to know Sheila McInerney quite well. My team would go play her team. In those days, we had a lot of pretty congenial relationships, and so you'd say, hey, how about if I bring my team to Phoenix in next year? Oh yeah, that'd be great. And so it was a nice way to bolster your program in a way too. Well, it was a quite a transition for sure. I'd been working with David Benjamin, I think, a lot of years. I don't even know how many years I was on the board before we switched over to John Bogosian. Um, it became, I would say, more of from maybe grassroots to Fortune 500. Um, there was a sense that we were going more in a business like direction, that we had to try to financially bolster our organization, and probably, I don't know, what's a like a software upgrade. We needed a lot of technology change, we needed a lot of things. And David, I have incredible respect for David Benjamin. I mean, what he did was extraordinary, and the amount of time that he devoted, and I always enjoyed working with him. I was probably in that transition board, I can't remember, 4 years, maybe 4, I think, 2 terms. And it was interesting to bring tennis players that maybe had a college experience, maybe some of them didn't, but they brought in a whole different view of how they felt the organization could move forward. What I remember about the advocacy program, I think, is that it all began. There was a lot of time where programs were getting dropped a lot, and um, it just so happened that my program at Western Michigan was dropped twice. And the first time I had to fight that battle on my own. I got the ACLU, I got the National Women's Law Center involved, I had some people from the USTA involved, um, and uh, as it turns out, I really didn't need all that. It was somewhat of a, I mean, in all honesty, it was a ploy by those ahead of me in administration to receive more funds from the university. They're like, we have to, So anyway, they never really intended to drop women's tennis, although they did drop one men's sport at that time. And then I think about 5 or 6 years after that, they did this big giant thing where they were going to investigate everything, and that's when the USTA and John Bogosian actually became a huge proponent for Western Michigan. Um, and some of that is due to the fact that at Western Michigan, we host the biggest junior boys tournament in the world, and the national championships for boys 16s and 18s. And our facilities are critical to that tournament. They couldn't host it without Western Michigan's facilities. And so it was a kind of a dual thing that we wanted to make sure college tennis wasn't disappearing, but also that tournament became pretty important. And so I think that's where I most got involved, was knowing that these programs, you have to have a way to get people to stand up to fight back. Just because they say they're cutting your program doesn't mean it has to be done. The ITA does everything. They everything from really um, making proposals to how the rules should be for the game, um, to of course rankings are huge. They administer every tournament. They do everything. I mean, I don't even know how they would have an NCAA tournament without the ITA, because they're the ones that right now, if I'm not mistaken, I think we're close to the final selections now for the fall for the singles and doubles. The ITA is college tennis, even though even though people might not know that, and I know they always try to make sure people do know that, but the ITA is college tennis. I compete now on the senior tennis. I compete at all the gold ball events for the seniors, and I played on a couple of world teams and been to world championships, um, and my family's still really involved in tennis. Um, I think tennis is holding its own, but I'm not sure that they've yet found the direction that they need. There's so many opportunities now for people to do things. I mean, somebody just asked me yesterday, "Do you want to play padel?" I'm like, I don't want to play padel. I don't want to play pickleball. I don't want to play table tennis. I just want to play tennis. But now there's so many things that you can do that I think it's difficult. I'm excited in the way that I have seen more people returning to adult tennis. After college, they take some time off, and then they have. I think there's more people returning to tennis. It's an interesting time for me right now. I have come to realize that no matter where I am, no matter what city I'm in, no matter where I live, no matter my personal life, whatever, through the highs and lows of living, that the tennis court is what I would say my first home. I can go anywhere. I can play, I can make a friend, which is a big, big piece of playing tennis. And I don't know that you know that immediately. I think as you go through time, you realize that, winning tournaments and doing this and being whatever is all good, but it's the relationships that you establish as you go through your years. And I've been going all over the world here lately playing tournaments, and no matter where I go, I just played one last weekend in Phoenix, and I played against this woman who was a lot younger than me, and she's actually from Grosse Pointe originally. And she goes, "Hey, I think that I was on a team that one of your players was on. I played for Stephanie Perhitko at Grosse Pointe South," and I'm like, "Yeah, Stephanie was in our Hall of Fame," and then one of my players was one of her teammates, and I'm like, no matter where, it's very small. They have that degree of separation thing. I think tennis is like one degree. Well, no matter where you find somebody you meet that you know somebody, and it's very unifying. I love that. No, I think this is a great thing that you're doing. I really think it's fantastic because I've noticed, even in my own university, the history is not necessarily being kept the way I would like to see it. Of course, the older we get, the more we like to know that it's still there. But the growth of college tennis is fantastic. I mean, it's amazing. And I don't know how many teams there are now. It used to be like over 300 women's teams and maybe over 250 men's teams at Division One, and I mean, it's really impressive. I think we're one of the top five offered sports at the collegiate level. So, and that's a lot of that's thanks to David and his hard work of getting this all together and getting the thing off the ground.